Welcome to What Do Siblings Talk About?
I'm Jacob,
And I'm Veronica.
and we're siblings.
Yay.
All right, welcome to episode 9, I believe, of What Do Siblings Talk About. This is another art review, and in this case, it is a selection of your choice, Veronica. So why don't you lead this off?
Yeah, this is yet another thing I've forced Jacob to watch. Um, it is a movie called Captain Fantastic, which came out, I believe, in 2016. And it's Aragorn running around a forest with
Yeah.
a bunch of little people. Um, no,
And
it's
Viggo Mortensen, he looks surprisingly still like Aragorn Viggo Mortensen.
he looks
And this,
he's aged well.
yeah, this movie came out almost 15 years after The Return of the King was filmed. So that's
Yeah.
the timeline we're talking.
Yes, but so this is Viggo Mortensen slash Aragorn. He plays the dad of 6 kids, and they live off the grid in the Pacific Northwest. And we're talking like off the grid.
Yeah,
Like,
the opening
they don't have a
scenes,
house.
the opening scenes of hunting wild deer with knives.
Yes, not even good knives. Like they may have made these knives from their own iron somewhere.
Yeah, exactly, which they mined and then
Yeah.
smelted.
So yeah, that's just the premise, and what you find out at the beginning is that the mother.
So let's pause real quick here. We're going to heavily spoil this, which
Yes.
will dramatically decrease. Here in the first few minutes, we're going to heavily spoil this movie in a way that will dramatically decrease how
Your
interesting it is to
enjoyment.
watch. So please pause if this is something you think you might like. This is a film that won several awards at the Cannes Film Festival in France before having pretty decent commercial success in wide release. So it's a good
Yeah.
movie. If you want to go watch it, go do that now and then come back to us. Back to you, Veronica.
Yes, sorry, I was. Yep, kind of everything is a spoiler alert once you start talking about the movie.
Yep.
But yes, you find out at the beginning that the mother of the family, Viggo Mortensen's wife, has gone back to civilization to get treatment for bipolar, and I think also like it's maybe within the first 15 minutes. Viggo Mortensen and the kids go into town to like pick up the mail, and he finds out that she committed suicide and died. And so
We told you there were spoilers.
right off the bat, main character you never even see, she died.
Yeah, but an important character.
Yes, yeah, and important because this is the whole driver of the plot, which is that dad and kids now have to go back to society to attend mom's funeral, and along the way they have to re-engage with relatives who I would say not supportive of their lifestyle that where they've been living in the woods for the past 10 years. So that's the main driver of the plot, is that she's died and now they have to like reintegrate with society.
So, Veronica, when you introduced the idea of this movie to me, my imagination went a few different directions around what this was going to be. Is this some kind of absolutely ridiculous, fantastical story? Is this an idealization of what living in nature is like? How would you characterize the kind of family and situation we're being presented with?
I mean, it's like extreme extreme off the grid, extreme out of society, definitely out of the mainstream, not even on one of the side streams. Like, one of the things that really drew me to this movie was that their depiction of it's probably the best depiction of homeschoolers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But that being said, we were homeschooled and we lived nothing like this. So it's we did not live on a
Mostly.
forest with no electricity and running water. And the deer we killed were not with knives and bare hands. Anyway.
So yeah, so I do want to touch on that this is in many ways a dramatically realistic portrayal of the way some people actually do live.
Yeah.
And a lot of the significant plot points in the movie, a lot of the significant relationship dynamics and interactions are, especially as we got further into the movie past the introduction, to me, actually shockingly accurate
Yes.
in their portrayal. And while we watched this together and while we were watching, Veronica, I was asking you, like, who made this? Like,
Yeah.
and why?
Who was on the writing team that was very obviously homeschooled? Because this is, yeah, no, it is. It's the exact situation is obviously dramatized, and they're living in a forest and doing some wild things. But yeah, it's the mannerisms, the interactions with other people, the discussions they're having are all like I've never seen that depicted in a movie so accurately. It's
Right.
wild.
So I'd like to read a little bit from a couple of news articles. There's one in Esquire. Actually, yeah, this is mainly a news article in Esquire from 2016, which came out around the time this was published, about the film's writer and director Matt Ross. And apparently, the idea of this film was he was questioning choices he and his wife were making as parents, and wondered what would happen if he were quote unquote completely present in his children's lives, while noting that modern technology had made that difficult. In making the film, Ross took autobiographical moments from his own life, notably being raised in what he termed as alternative living communities. So it's the writer and director's own
Yeah.
experience that is largely being leveraged. So
Yeah,
we
that makes total sense.
we both agreed while watching this that certainly at least some of the writers needed to have had this experience themselves. This is not somebody
Yeah.
sort of spitballing an idea of what it might be like to grow up extremely isolated from society. This is somebody who definitely experienced
Yeah,
that.
and it wasn't. I think oftentimes when you see homeschoolers or people in generally alternative lifestyles depicted on screen, it's very much a caricature. I can't say that word. Because I was homeschooled. I never learned how to say that word.
You know the word, you don't know how to pronounce it.
I can spell it for you. I've never said it in real life. But yeah, a lot of times you see this sort of, I'm not going to say the word again, caricature of like what homeschoolers are like, or what really any of the alternative lifestyles like Amish.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. We might use the word homeschoolers because that's sort of the bucket that we probably have the most relevant experience in. But I think you're right, Veronica, to characterize this as any alternative sort of not
Anything not
traditional
mainstream.
socialization.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, this is a snapshot of what being in an extremely alternative household situation with parents and children can look like in America.
Yes.
This is sort of uniquely possible in the United States in a way that I'm not really sure it is most other places, and it certainly doesn't look the same most other places. There are characteristics of this kind of alternative lifestyle which are specifically American.
Yeah, uniquely American. And probably, I mean, outside of America, probably has more relevance in other Western countries. But yeah, you're right. You wouldn't see this in, say, Germany or something, just because their society is so different from ours.
Yeah, and I think the kind of so we're talking about, let's be clear, what is sometimes referred to as the nuclear family. So a mother, a father, and their children. In this case, it's several children. I think six, I want to say. And the way in which in a typical American situation, the kinds of decisions and decision making that go into a mother and father deciding to take their family outside the bounds of normal society and do things differently. There's a particular way in which that tends to manifest in the United States, I think, and that's something we're going to talk about. I do want to comment on the opening of this. I really personally disliked the first roughly 10 minutes, the intro. I don't know whose idea it was, but it's the first 10 minutes that are the least realistic and the most just sort of overblown. And maybe that's a good hook for a normal audience. It wasn't for me. It made me want to puke a little bit.
Yeah.
Where there's light bloom, there are kids killing wild animals and then eating bites out of the raw liver, and and angelic voices singing in the background. It's like, come on.
That opening sequence is more, I think, more along the lines of what your average non-homeschooler thinks homeschoolers do. And after you get past that, it becomes much more realistic. I think that's correct.
Gotcha. So one of the things that first came to mind as I was sort of reviewing this film and taking notes was the parents in this scenario. What are their names, Veronica? You might remember. Ben and Leslie Cash. So neither of them come from a background like the way they're raising their children. As far as we can tell from the movie, both of them came from fairly standard American backgrounds. Viggo Mortensen certainly seems like a guy who grew up just as a kind of relatively mainstream California hippie kind of type. We can tell this because we spend the whole movie with Ben, Viggo Mortensen's character, and he's a fairly normal Californian as far as I can tell. Slightly hippie. And then we also meet the deceased wife, Leslie's parents, and they are wealthy American Southern Californians or Arizonans or something like that. Very mainstream, apparently Catholic from the church service that we see.
Hey.
And one of the things...
Leslie is a lawyer. That gets referenced sort of in passing, that she left her lawyer job to go live in a forest.
Yeah, so I want to bring up this idea that this is something you do see in the alternative communities, is almost everyone who gets into one of these, maybe the Amish and Mennonites would be a significant exception, but most people in the homeschooling community and a lot of people in other, I would say, fairly isolated communities who like want to go live off the grid or want to go raise their family in an extremely unique way. Almost always, the parents making this decision grew up in extremely normal and extremely kind of socially acceptable scenarios.
Yeah, so the kids are sort of first gen off the grid people. Although I think that is changing because our generation, like the people of our generation, will now be the second generation. Like I have friends now who their parents were also sort of alternative lifestyle. So I think like particularly with homeschooling, we were probably in the first, among the first generation of kids where that was becoming more doable.
Yeah. So for
which
context,
I think coincided with the internet, sort of.
Well, a bit before. My homeschooling days date back to the 1980s. And yes, it was extremely socially unusual in those days for parents to homeschool.
So roughly millennials were sort of the first generation where homeschooling was becoming a thing. So those are sort of the first generation. And of course, millennials now have children. So those children are now in, I guess, Amish territory, where there'll now be multiple generations of people who are doing this.
Yeah. So one of the things that this brings to mind is role-playing. The general idea that, in my opinion, when you find people from an extremely socially normal background who decide to raise their family in something very unique and different, it almost always, it seems to me, requires a degree of role playing. So the parents have to decide, how would people in this scenario raise their kids, provide food, decide to interact with certain normal parts of normal society. And there's a degree to which they have to figure out what their role is supposed to be and act in that new role, which isn't what would come organically. So normally
Yeah.
people don't have to think about those things. Normal people, as it were, just do what everybody around them does, and maybe that
Yeah.
makes them the sheeple. But there's I would say a naturalness to it, where it's not sort of this conscious thought through. This is what I have to do. Like, I think part of what made me think this is in this opening hunting scene, the oldest child of the family, roughly 18-year-old boy, kills this deer with a knife, and then Viggo Mortensen sort of opens up the deer to start gutting it and like anoints his son's forehead with blood and then presents him with a piece of the liver to take a bite out of it. It's like, come on.
Rawr.
Come on. Real
Yeah.
people don't do this.
Well, but see, so this is the thing about alternative lifestyles. To your point, if you are living in the mainstream, there's an established framework that you're working off of, and it's established. Everybody knows what it is, and so nobody has to think about it. If you're living an alternative lifestyle, there's no really, because it's alternative. There's no real frameworks. You are, I mean, making stuff up as you go along. And there may be other families or people you can talk to who can give you ideas. But in large part, you are creating your own rules. So
Yeah.
something like, oh, every time we kill a deer, we're gonna, take out its liver and I'll gnaw on it. That's the rule that he's come up with for his
Right.
the way they live now.
I feel like something performative like that, though, is sort of, you see people, I sometimes refer to this as cosplaying. You see people who do actual cosplaying. I have no issue with this. But then I've seen something similar in religious services, where in the Christian world, you get sometimes these sort of people who are trying to be ultra traditionalist and throwback to older times and eras and practices. So a particular example of this would be in Anglicanism. There's a small Anglican community that is super, super interested in the last sort of Catholic form of worship which existed in England in the late 1500s. Specifically, this is called the Sarum Rite. And the community is very small and a little bit weird. And to me, it almost seems like there's a degree of cosplaying where there's this sense of, oh, this previous time, this other culture was in some way better or at least worth retaining. And we're going to a certain extent, we're going to play act our conception of what we thought those people were like and sort of be very performative about it. And that
Yeah.
there's something desirable about that.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts?
Well, I mean, I guess if you're moving out of the mainstream into whatever your alternative lifestyle is, I mean, you sort of have to do that to a certain extent. And that, I mean, that's probably good, because I guess what I'm trying to say is when you originally get into an alternative lifestyle, you're going to be acting until a point at which it just becomes you. And depending on how alternative the lifestyle is, maybe it'll be, 2 weeks or a month, or maybe it'll be years, and you'll still be sort of acting.
For me, I'm going to wait until an angel comes down and gives me a book. And then I'm just going to follow the book.
Or some gold tablets somewhere.
Well, I thought about saying that, but there's more than one religious leader who received a book from an angel. So
Yeah. It's helpful when they do that.
yeah, to give normal people their comeuppance as well. I think I also see there's a kind of role playing that almost everyone partakes in, at least at some point, usually in their professional career, which involves imposter syndrome. So people get a job, they feel imposter syndrome, and then they role play what they think they're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing
Well, but
for their
this is,
job.
I think, very common sort of business slash lifestyle advice is, like dress for the role you want, or
Hmm.
act for the role you want, or whatever. So it's I think everyone does it at some level.
Yeah.
Uh, but
To get back to Captain Fantastic, um, I do want to throw in a literary parallel, which came to mind again as we were discussing this movie while watching it. That this strikes me very much as a kind of modern version of Robinson Crusoe.
mhm.
That I think Robinson Crusoe was very much honestly a less realistic imagining of what man in a state of nature ought to be like, sort of modeling off of maybe some of Rousseau's writing about sort of what we think man outside of normal society would be. This, in some respects, and maybe this alternative lifestyle movement in some respects, kind of is a modern reinvention of that same kind of idea of just get out of this soul crushing,
Yeah,
anxiety inducing, morally bankrupt civilization that we're a part of.
yeah, yeah. Of we just want to step away from society, and you see that a little bit in the movie when you meet Leslie's parents. I mean, they're not terrible people by any means.
Hmm.
Like they have excellent intentions, but you do see from their sort of mannerisms and interactions, you can kind of see how it would be grating on someone and maybe push someone to go, you know what? I'm just never going to talk to you again. And I'm going to live in a forest. And
Yeah.
and maybe everyone doesn't have that extreme of reaction to your parents or your in-laws, but you can sort of see the thought process behind it. And I think a lot of people see, whether it's family or general things in society, you don't like your neighbors in the HOA, like whatever it is, there are a lot of reasons I think that will push someone to say, you know what, I'm just going to quit all of it and leave, because that's an easier solution than trying, to deal with whatever society is doing right
Yeah.
now.
And to move on from that, this is something else I think the movie got very accurate, is sort of typical views that you would see people in this environment have, especially the children.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, and I mean, you see this in kids anyway, especially teenagers, and I was guilty of this myself, of being overly idealistic and thinking that you read a great theory and suddenly you think, wow, that theory is so well put together. If
That's
only
me.
we just haven't tried Marxism hard enough.
Yeah.
Now, for me, it
Yeah.
wasn't Marxism, but this is really normal. Like these kids have like posters. A 8-year-old has a poster of Pol Pot on the wall.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
She's really into Pol Pot at the moment.
Marxism is a great idea. It sounds fantastic. And I think the kids in this sort of separated alternative lifestyle, they're picking up on similar vibes from their parents, and they're just going harder,
Yeah.
at least at younger ages. So this is actually pretty normal. But another thing which is particular to the American flavor of this is sort of ultra hardcore libertarianism
Hmm.
and anarchism, both of which I think don't work. I fundamentally think that there's a huge value to a settled social order and to the good things that an society can gift to its members, which you just cannot produce on the individual.
By yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna say I kind of fall into the camp of it takes a village.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, just from a practical standpoint, if you want to live off the grid, you spend so much time just surviving,
mhm.
that you end up having little time for doing other things. So in the movie, I guess they do have a fair amount of time for for educating themselves, but I think that might actually be not quite realistic. Where because
Hmm.
I think one of the things we brought up is it's filmed in the summer, and so everything is very nice and green, and the weather there's like no rain, the weather's great, and that would just not be the case in the winter. If you were to do this sort of IRL, you would spend such an amount of time just sustaining yourself that the sort of higher order of things in life would you I don't think you'd be able to do them.
Yeah, and so this actually brings up another thing, particularly toward the beginning of the movie, that I thought was a bit unrealistic, which was how orderly their whole living arrangement is, how
Yeah.
well put together their greenhouses and their storage rooms and the array
Well,
of
I
preserved
mean,
foods.
they've been there for 10 years, so they've had time to build an infrastructure.
Yes, so I guess one of the things I wanted to bring up on this topic is you do see this degree of order in some alternative communities, and that tends to be in places where you have a leader. In this case, it would be the parents, but in a community, you could see something similar, who are extremely authoritarian and just crush the will of everyone below them. There aren't great ways to achieve this degree of order in a small community
Yeah,
without like an extreme degree of emotional coercion.
yeah,
As far as I can tell, like think typical cults, cults that manage to be orderly and well organized, almost always it's because the leader or the leadership circle is like emotionally manipulating
yeah,
everybody in the group.
yeah. Well,
Um,
a very strong leader and like 110% buy-in from everyone else involved.
which honestly, on the family level, is relatively easy to achieve.
Yeah,
If you're raising a family in a very isolated situation where the only contact that children have is with each other, with their siblings and their parents, it's not you're going to get that buy-in
yeah,
because that's the way kids are.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's realistic. But I was wondering if Ben, the father, does not seem to me to be the kind of person who would actually be able to achieve that.
You mean
So
like personality-wise?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it perhaps the mother was more of the driving force behind it. I mean, we don't. Yeah, it's hard to tell because we don't see her,
So
and
this,
we
yeah,
sort
that's
of
just one of the kind of unresolved points of the movie that I think it's good that the viewer is left to ponder over some things, but it's really left
question. Yeah,
unresolved. Like, who was the driver behind this whole thing, and what was the relationship between Ben and Leslie?
yeah. Well, and we don't see any of Ben's family really, right? So, yeah. Again, we don't know if he went along with Leslie or Leslie went along with him, or if they were sort of equally pushing each other to do something like this.
Yep. So earlier you had mentioned the second generation sort of alternative lifestyle family model, and I guess starting with Captain Fantastic, if I guess if if Leslie had been fine and Ben and Leslie had continued this lifestyle, do you feel like it would have been iterable? Do you feel like the children would have then raised their own kids in the wilderness and
Yeah.
continued, and it would have still looked like this?
I feel like, well, so this is partially based off of sort of my experience and statistics. Um, I would assume that half of the kids would leave and never speak to their parents again, and the other half would stay in the forest and raise their kids exactly the same way. I think like that 50% attrition rate is highly common in alternative lifestyles. Um, and
I
I
think that'd
think
be, yeah.
maybe 50% is even ambitious. Maybe maybe it'd only be like one kid who came back.
Well, and the
But
kids who
I
left,
think
would they have done okay? And the kids who
yes.
stayed, would it have looked very similar to Ben and Leslie's family?
So I mean I think if there are kids who stayed who never went into society, they would probably be doing very similar things to Ben and
Hmm.
Leslie. The only difference would be I mean, presumably, if they're going to start their own families, they would need to bring in outside spouses.
Yeah.
And as the community grows, you're going to get different sort of influences and opinions, and it's going to change the way the whole thing works as you add more and more people. But I think largely, I think it is iterable, up to a certain point. I think once you get to a certain size, there's certain things they were doing that you couldn't do with maybe say 50 people.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
guess we do have examples of iterable communities, such as the Amish and the Mennonites. And one of the things you start to see as those communities extend generationally is more social and cultural differentiation from the mainstream of society. Part of that is simply a slower pace of social change. But I think part of it is also the development of local culture and customs, which can then start to look kind of very weird to normal people. So I want to talk about some of the things I think the movie did, which are very unique, but I'd like to talk about whether we think they're realistic. So
Yeah.
how did we feel about the sibling dynamics, the parent-child relationships, responses to family trauma, relationships with outside family, the grandparents, the cousins? Do you have initial thoughts
Yeah.
on? I'm interested in what we thought we saw and whether we think it's accurate for a family in this
Yeah.
situation.
So I think this is the piece that I found highly accurate.
Same.
The specifically like the interfamily relationships and the relationships with the family who were outside of this lifestyle. There is there's one scene in particular where they're at their cousin's house, and I think these are Leslie's sister and her family. And they're two boys who are teenagers, and there's one point where the Captain Fantastic is arguing with the in-laws about generally their lifestyle, and they're sort of accusing him of neglecting his kids, and so he calls in their kids, and it starts asking him questions about like the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and their kids can't really answer anything. And so then he calls in his 8-year-old and she just starts reeling off all of this,
And
various
not just
facts and quotes and
yeah, but
well, yeah, she's not just mimicking stuff. She also starts explaining various things that shows, oh, she actually understands the Bill of Rights and various other related constitutional things. And that is something like that whole scene, it just highly accurate. I think
we have
almost
lived that.
every homeschooler at some point has done that at Thanksgiving dinner with their public schooled cousins. Like that just happens all the time. And
So
yeah.
another thing about the sibling dynamics and parent-child dynamics that I want to mention that I found extremely realistic is unlike a lot of sort of more mainstream family situations, the siblings get along spectacularly well with each other and really, really look after each other. I find that very accurate. That doesn't mean they don't bicker at all and have disagreements, but also the parent-child relationships, the children, Ben and Leslie's 6 children, look up to their parents and have an enormous amount of respect for their parents. You do get kids, especially getting into the teen years, having some rebellious sentiment, but there's still just an insane amount of respect for the parents, while the children are still at home with their parents. So
Yeah, and that sense of a family with sort of a capital F, is something you really find in this lifestyle, and you don't have to be like a family living on by yourself to create that. I think it just happens whenever you are in an alternative lifestyle. The family bonds become a lot stronger, because you're sort of all in this slightly weird thing together. Um,
Yeah.
and not, I mean,
And
not even weird in a bad way. It could be weird in a very good way. Because you all have this shared experience that is not what 90% of the people around you are experiencing.
yeah. And for the kids, they don't really know that there's an alternative. They might see that there's an alternative, but they haven't lived an alternative the way the parents have.
Sure.
And when I say an alternative, they haven't lived a normal social upbringing. So they're sort of very tied. I do want to say there's a danger to this bond as well, that you see kids from this kind of background ending up as adults feeling extremely unhappy about the situation they were put through, and the depth of
Yeah.
the bond can sometimes be almost turned upside down.
Yeah. It can make it worse.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
as a parent entering into this situation, I would be inclined to say, be aware that you're increasing the stakes of the relationships in your
Yeah.
family. It's not just a guarantee that you're going to deepen the relationship. There's an increased likelihood also that you will make the relationship much more difficult.
Really, really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of related to that, I would say that while growing up, and even as an adult, it's a very good thing to have that bond with your siblings, provided it's not broken. Um, it can also make it very difficult to sort of integrate into society if you're ever forced to. And you see this a little bit with the oldest, the 18-year-old who's sort of getting ready to go to college.
Yeah.
He has various problems interacting with normal people, and I would say that again, very much it was something that I recognized in myself. I mean, I would say I went to a very tiny school for college, and even at this very tiny school, the biggest culture shock for me was having to interact with people my own age, because I just never done that before. I primarily interacted with my siblings or other adults. And so having to go and hang out with a bunch of other 18, 19-year-olds was just completely foreign to me. And I had no idea how to talk to them. And so that, I mean, you might say that's sort of classic homeschooler, like you haven't been socialized. But it's not even that. I had been socialized, like with a lot of siblings and adults. I just hadn't been socialized with people who were my age.
Right. Yeah. Agreed with that. I think anyone listening, you can hear Veronica and I. We're commenting on how whether or not we found this realistic. You can tell
Yeah.
to a certain extent. Watching this movie, you can get a little more insight into what made us the people we are.
Yes, there's all sorts of spoiler alerts here for the way
Given
Jacob and I grew up.
right, given that we are easily presenting ourselves as experts, capable
Yeah.
of
There's
criticizing.
there's no question that we have like the standing to speak on this movie.
Yes. And actually, one of the things you already spoke to a little bit was something that in this movie that may come across as unrealistic is the extremely high educational
Yeah.
achievement of the children, and I'll also say the physical fitness levels of the children. I'm not just speaking
Not
to
unrealistic at all.
not unrealistic at all. Yeah. And I'm not just speaking to our family, but I think you're generally going to see this. Those are both very, very common outcomes. And also, these children are all musicians, basically, also very common, and like musicians at a
Yeah.
high level. When
Yeah. Well,
children don't,
this sort of not just it's not just high intelligence in one area. The multi-specialty, like high intelligence across the arts and mathematics and science, and like they're good at a lot of different things.
right. And a lot of this honestly comes down to if you raise children in an environment where they're not surrounded by the crack cocaine that entertainment is for children these days, It's not just television, smartphones, video games. I think these are all really neat things, but if you drastically limit or eliminate children's access to these things, they will
Yeah.
practice piano for 3 hours a day.
Yeah. They might be
That's it.
very bored, and that's all they have to do.
They might not be happy about their lives practicing piano 3 hours a day, but they'll do it because they don't have anything else to do.
If you don't tell them that nobody else does this, they'll never know until they're 18, and then they'll be very bitter. Um, that's not personal experience. But
So I guess
well, okay, I would say along with that, the other thing that makes this sort of high intelligence realistic is when you raise your children like this. It's not just that you're separating them from this sort of time suck of modern media. It also allows for highly individualized education.
and
So
actually highly individualized personality development.
yes, and also I think there's something to be said for kind of what we were talking about earlier, where the kids are into like various different dictators just sort of randomly. That is something that if you're in a sort of mainstream environment, a big public school, whatever it is, sort of wild ideas like that get pushed down. Whereas if you are in a very small environment, perhaps your own family and siblings, you can go on all sorts of tangents and wild ideas and, follow rabbit holes down various education streams. And it doesn't really get stopped the same way that it would be if you're surrounded by a bunch of peers. So I
Yeah.
think that it allows for sort of wilder, broader thinking. And that I think is a huge boost to intelligence as well.
Yeah. And I'll say this is to some extent speaking to some positives of the educational experience that's possible in one of these alternative communities. But it's also a comment about the American education system, particularly I would say at the pre-college level, like all the way up through high school, is kind of uniquely broken in, I would say, in the current
Yeah.
world. I see this having taught professionally up through college in both the United States and outside of the United States. I think the American K through high school education system is the worst in the developed world in
Yeah.
terms of the culture that it engenders. Leave aside the quality of the academics.
You're talking to sort of like the groupthink lockstep culture.
Yeah, and the social dynamic between students.
Yeah.
I think it's really unhealthy in the United States. I think we've talked about this a little bit before. The United States specifically designed its education system based on the Prussian model that the resurgent unifying Germans were developing in the heavy middle era of the economic revolution. And it was largely designed to help train good factory workers and soldiers.
Yay. I mean,
So,
it is good for that, I guess.
yeah,
It's
in
not
Trump's
good
America,
if you
that's all
want
we
sort
need.
of if you want original, innovative thinking. It's not great for that.
Yeah. I have to comment on the birds and the bees conversation, which you had warned me was coming up.
Yes.
It was one of the best treatments of that topic I've ever seen. If parents could just talk
Yeah.
this way with their kids, like avoid a lot of problems, but also
Yeah.
just
So
extremely comical.
for those of you who stopped at the beginning to watch the movie, it is rated R. We probably should have thrown that in there. But
People will see that.
hopefully you noticed that when the credits were rolling.
Yeah.
But it's fairly, there's it's two or three scenes that maybe I think are warranting the R rating. And honestly, probably skippable and wouldn't be a huge detriment to the movie.
But if
But one of
if
them,
you don't, yeah, if you don't
one of
have
them is this birds
qualms
and the
about this,
bees, birds and the bees conversation with a 6-year-old.
8-year-old.
8-year-old, sorry. Yeah, very mature.
In
which
a bus where dad is giving the conversation, driving the family bus, and the 8-year-old's in the back, and all the other kids are in between,
yes,
and
yeah.
dad and
So
the
like
8-year
one
dad is explaining life to the 8-year-old.
one one of the older kids is reading the Lita, and which raises questions about various other alternative lifestyles. And of course, the 8-year-old has questions, but the dad just like very black and white explains what all of these things are. Which again, not every homeschooling family or alternative lifestyle family is like this, but I know ones who are. I know
Yeah.
dads who have done exactly that.
Yeah, I think in more religiously conservative families, there are going to be heavy taboos about
Yeah.
being able to have this kind of conversation at all. But I found it both both hilarious and also kind of I don't know what to say, but kind
It
of
reminds me
admirable.
of. Have you seen Kindergarten Cop with Arnold Schwarzenegger? Okay.
No.
Well, for people who have seen Kindergarten Cop, there is a little kid in there whose parents are, I think, OBGYNs, and sort of has similar level of understanding of human anatomy and various functions. It's hilarious.
Gotcha. One phenomenon I did want to bring up that this is also sort of a cautionary note to people who don't have personal experience in sort of raising a family in an alternative environment. Is if you're going it alone or relatively alone, you're not part of a community where there's some communal knowledge and the ability to share lessons learned and lean on other people's expertise and experience. To form a family and live off the grid or live in such an extremely alternative way like this, as a parent, you're constantly being forced to decide that you know better than every social norm that has been created in the society you're leaving behind. And I just want to say that's kind of a perilous position for anyone to put themselves in. To say,
Yeah.
I as an individual have the confidence that I am the appropriate and capable judge of every social norm.
Yeah.
You
Well,
start
and this
teaching
is.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that this is sort of where we get to the crux of the movie is Viggo Mortensen has a sort of crisis of faith where he starts to doubt that he is capable of making all these decisions, and sort of has like a little mini breakdown where he's like, you know what, my kids would be better if I was not their Captain Fantastic, if I just left them and they can live in society by themselves.
Yeah. But part of my warning is I think as a parent, it is admirable to be able to make judgments about things that sort of maybe normal parents would accept as okay, but you have some degree of confidence that you need to take care of your children. You want to be an exceptional parent, just not an average parent. And that is going to require sometimes making decisions to consciously do things differently with your family than an average or normal parent would. The trouble is when you set yourself down a path of consistently and constantly making these decisions, particularly if you're in an environment where you have to consciously reaffirm these decisions, you change yourself over time. You develop a personality. Well, actions and decisions over time repeated, and actions and decisions of a certain type, they build habits, and that
Form your
becomes your character.
good old Aristotle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is really true. You are what you repeatedly do. Um, so yeah, it's something. I mean, I would say this is a relatively new parent. It is. It can be very, very isolating and stressful to constantly have to make these decisions. And I'm not even living off the grid. uh, and yeah, there is, you have this sense that there is a lot of weight attached to all of them. And not, I mean, not like every single decision you're making, but because you've
if you take on this role to be, the primary former of everything in your child's life, it becomes much, much more serious, because there aren't, you don't have outside teachers who are teaching things to your child, or, yeah, I don't know exactly where I was going with that
I guess
point,
my
but
strong
it does change you. Yeah.
my strong commendation would be, parents, please try not to put yourselves in this kind of situation where you're very isolated and having to make every decision about the good of your children. Find people who have done this well already, whom you can rely on, and ideally find a community
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily even have to become a member of, but a community that you can consistently rely on for support and encouragement and example.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that in the long road, not only will that be good for your sanity and mental health and stress levels, I think it's also good for the children as well.
Yes.
To see, even if you're in a community of very like-minded people, everyone will do things slightly differently and parent slightly differently. And so just opening that up to your kids, of the sort of variety of ways that things can be done. And hopefully what they'll see is, what maybe it's 10 families or whatever that you're close to, they'll see sort of 10 iterations of ways things can be done. And yeah, I think it just leads to your kids sort of understanding that there's not just one sort of black and white option of how things are done, because that's how they're done in your family.
Yeah. And even leaving aside the psychological benefits to both parents and children, I'm going to say I think there's a better chance that you're going to get things right if you can work as a small community on this.
Yeah, because you're not, even if you're brilliant, and even if, like we were talking about, if you're second or third generation doing this, so you have a lot of lived experience, you're still going to make mistakes, and you're still not going to be able to think through all the options of every decision. But if you have other people around you who are also making mistakes, you're all going to be able to learn from each other and bounce ideas off of each other and pick things up from each other. So yeah, it's that village. It takes a village. It's sort of like shared hive mind of people to come up with some of the best.
That's my at this point in life. That's where I find myself.
You want to join a hive mind.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to have to think anymore. I just want to be a sheeple.
Right. Just a small sheeple, not like big homeschool, not like big public school sheeple, just like small level sheeple.
So I want to ask your opinion on the conclusion. Let's talk about what actually happens at the end, just briefly, and then your thoughts on that.
Well, okay, so yeah, again, if you haven't stopped at this point to watch the movie,
Now we're going to spoil the ending.
Now we'll spoil everything. Yes, so the conclusion of their mother's funeral happens. That's a whole thing, but the ultimate conclusion after various events is that Viggo Mortensen decides to basically moderate their lifestyle. So the final scenes, what you see is they now have a house. This bus that they were using, like to go into town once a month, has been parked and turned into a chicken coop. And I think there's even running water and electricity in the house. Like it's a huge. They've gone. I think you made this comment when we were watching it. They've gone from like really weird homeschoolers to just normal homeschoolers.
Yeah. Can I say I actually felt a palpable sense of relief when I realized the bus was a chicken coop. Like, I felt emotionally. Like yeah, I genuinely felt emotionally relieved when I saw that. Exposing some of my own trauma maybe here.
Yeah, they don't have this nomadic lifestyle. They have a physical house where they're sleeping indoors every night. I mean, they had like tents before, but just much more stable and established and sort of moderated.
The one, I think the one thing that is was sort of a false note for me is you get this idea. It's not explicitly said, but what you see is the dad is packing like bagged lunches for them, and he makes a sort of offhand comment, looking at his watch, that they have, you know, some 15 minutes till the bus gets here or something. So the implication is that he's sending them to school, which is
And without
you've been banned.
without
but
clarification, probably it seems like probably just a normal
yeah.
American public school.
Yes, yeah, you don't necessarily get the sense that he's sending them to like some small, you know, cottage arrangement of other homeschoolers or something.
Right. And
Which,
this, Veronica, I've said the same thing here. I think the American school system is a disaster. So yeah,
so this
I
is
share your
this is
concern
very
about this
bad.
point.
Um, but yeah, to me that's it. That is the one thing where I would go, well, that's not moderating, and well, not that that's not moderating. That's not something that needed to be fixed. There are many things about his lifestyle that were too extreme, I think. But the one thing he was doing really well was educating his kids to a very high level.
Yeah.
And so stepping back from educating them, which is what you get the sense that he's done. He's not really doing that anymore. That's where you go, no, that was the one piece of this that you got really, really right, that you should have hung on to. Like all the other things, great. I approve of all these moderations in your lifestyle. But that was the piece that you should have hung on to.
Yeah, I think I share that. And you can say there are practical concerns, like maybe, you know, they're living on the grid probably now, and he needs
Yeah.
a job to make some money and this, that, and the other. But
Sure.
but I agree. It seems like Ben has capitulated his involvement in his children's education
Maybe
rather
a little
completely.
too much. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I think I would have preferred to see him. And there does seem to be, this is sort of like the end of Inception, where if you haven't seen the end
Yeah.
of Inception, people, what's wrong with you?
Stop the podcast.
Stop right
Go
now.
watch that movie as
Watch
well.
Inception. Where it's Inception, right? Where the coin, it's unclear if the spinning coin on the table at the end is going to
Yeah.
fall or not. I didn't really like that in Inception. I thought that was sort of a cheap way to end. Here in Captain
Couldn't decide,
Fantastic,
yeah.
I think there still is some ambiguity left at the end. But I
Yeah.
honestly just think that probably kind of reflects Matt Ross's own uncertainty about the way he and his wife are raising their own kids, and
Sure.
and maybe mixed feelings about the way he was raised.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I guess that prompts another question, which is, so this was made in 2016. Do you think they would have changed the ending if it came out in last year, 2024?
I do think with more time, more people are becoming more concerned about the state of American society and American education.
Yeah.
So
'Cause-
if it were to change, I would suspect it would move more away from the standard send the kids away to the
Yeah.
public school.
like send them to what's available. Yeah, so that was kind of the sense, that was my feeling as well, where if you watch this in 2016, not that homeschooling or alternative lifestyles were unusual, but post-COVID, just issues with the school system and people doing alternate things with their kids have become much, much more common. So I think if you were to remake this movie now, that would probably affect things to a certain extent. There's one scene in the movie where they're in the bus and they get pulled over by a cop, and I think his first comment when he sees all the kids is, "What? No school today?" And they're all sort of scared that he's going to call the truant officer or something and put him in jail. Which, when we were growing up, that was a real fear. Like, I knew other kids who, well, they weren't in jail, but their parents were like fined because people thought their kids were truant out of school. Nowadays, I don't think that question would even occur to a cop if he saw some kids wandering, like, because there's so many people doing homeschooling or something like that that it wouldn't be remarkable anymore.
Well, this may go down in a category of good often comes out of evil, and there were many good consequences, I think, of the COVID lockdowns that we could talk
Yeah.
about. This being one of them. I think the working from home is, at least to some extent, another good consequence, where it sort of forced businesses to reconsider sort of established practices that didn't really need to exist anymore.
Yeah.
Shall we, Veronica, jump to a lightning round of Wikiroulette before calling it a pod?
Yes. Go for it.
All right, here we go. Going to share the screen if I can manage without technical difficulties. So maybe not. There we go. Boom. Wikiroulette. 3 rolls. Roll 1. Marie Anaut. I'm going to say, yes. Professor of Educational Sciences at Lumière Université Lyon 2.
I say we roll again.
Okay, we're rolling
she
again.
does talk about parent-child relationship.
Yeah, this is kind of the trouble is this is another very short article, but specifically her doctoral thesis was around child placement behaviors, analysis of intergenerational repetition. That's almost unbelievably
Literally
spot
over.
on for the conversation we just had.
Yes.
Anaut is a specialist in issues related to family ties, trauma, and resilience.
Yes, but see, we've already talked about that for like an hour, so we need a
think-
different.
Do we just take the win, Veronica?
We could also just take. I
right,
think
we're
this is
gonna
the
take the
first
win.
time we've stopped on the first article.
We're going to take
What?
a win, and I'll just read one more paragraph, which is basically the rest of the article. Anaut is a specialist in issues related to family ties, trauma, and resilience. Her research focuses on individuals, families, and groups confronted with adverse situations, particularly on forms of adaptation and integration of trauma. Her work and publications focus on theoretical and clinical aspects of resilience, processes, and parent-child relationships. I mean,
Basically, she studied the family in Captain Fantastic.
yes. So maybe this could prompt a discussion on, Veronica, whether you think there are coincidences.
It like between Wikiroulette and what we were talking about.
This is even in an incognito window, so it doesn't even
Yeah,
have my
I was
browsing
going to say
history.
the FBI agent who's monitoring you is
Yeah, it's either evidence that the deep state has more control than we thought, or honestly, and I'm not being facetious here, on a, I'll call it a cosmic scale, I don't think there are coincidences.
yeah.
And this is just today's proof.
It's the deep state. This is like when, I buy something on Amazon and then everywhere else I go I start seeing ads for it. Basically.
No, that I think is just Google ad placements.
It is whoever I don't know if we're ever going to interview people on this podcast, but I have a bone to pick with these people because like if I buy a speaker system on Amazon, once I've bought it, I don't need to see more ads for it. I've already made my decision. That is a pointless waste of ads. You needed to show me those ads while I was still looking before I pressed the buy button. What you should do is once I've bought the speaker system, now show me ads for other things that I could buy to go along with it. Don't show me ads for more speakers that I now already have shipped to me.
Veronica, don't give them more ideas. They're already building the AI tools to do exactly what you're suggesting. They don't
Probably
need
are.
help. And with that, shall we call it a show?
Yes. That was good.
Farewell.